Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of College Hockey Talk. On today's podcast, I'm joined by Merrimack women's hockey player Emily Oosterveld. Emily, welcome to the podcast, and how's everything going?
Hi again. Thanks for having me, and things are going pretty great right now.
Well, that's good to hear. And how's your off season going? And have you done anything interesting, whether it's hockey or non-hockey related?
So far, the off season, I think for me personally, is going pretty great. It's honestly awesome to be back with friends and family and just get back in training, getting on the ice wherever I can. Other than that, I've just been going to my cottage and hanging out around the pool. A lot of downtime.
Yeah, that's
But
always good to have some downtime. And I don't even, from like last year, I remember Canadians couldn't go back home during the season because of the pandemic restrictions. So it must be nice to finally get back home and spend some time with family. That's something as an American I've completely forgot about.
yeah, no, it was definitely tough not being able to go home at all. And because the borders, it was such a mess and they're closed and everything that like my family couldn't even come see me. So it's definitely tough being away, but it's great to be back.
Now, speaking of the pandemic, is there still any restrictions where you're at, or has all of that been lifted and it's been a pretty normal off season for you?
Oh, well, so since I'm from Ontario, it's been a bit of a mess over here restrictions wise. The beginning of the summer, it was definitely tough. Finding ice was next to impossible. The gym I went to, we could go here, and then all of a sudden, nope, it's closed again. And then so it's been tough, but for the most part, the last I'd say 3 weeks have been consistent in the gym on the ice. No lockdowns, no more waves of whatever. So yeah.
And how do you deal with those challenges? Obviously, you're probably used to it already from doing with it last off season, but how do you deal with the challenge of trying to find ice and trying to find a gym to prepare for this upcoming season?
Well, honestly, it's been really, really frustrating. And at times it has been hard to deal with. But honestly, my biggest thing is I just stay in communication with my coaches all the time. I tell them what's going on. I tell them, the current situation. And that's pretty much how I've been dealing with it. I've been doing my best, when the gyms are closed to hop on the bike in my basement and lift as many weights with whatever I have around the house as I can just to make do. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've been doing to deal with it. So
Yeah, and doing those at-home workouts, obviously it's a little more doing more body weight stuff and working with bands. How's that? And do you think that is there any benefit to doing more training that way versus maybe being in the gym and working with weights?
I would say I prefer to be in the gym, and I feel like it's a much bigger benefit that way just because like the trainers that I go to, like they know exactly what they're doing. They know how to work on your power, on your speed, on everything. And coming from just a college athlete, it can be hard sometimes to figure out, okay, if I have this weight and this, like how do I make this work? So I think it's definitely way more beneficial to be in the gym opposed to in your basement trying to figure it out on your own. But yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear because I've talked to some players and they said they prefer the at-home workouts because with doing the band and body weight stuff, they feel like it prevents injuries regarding their muscles compared to being in the gym for a full off season. So it's cool to hear another perspective on that.
Yeah.
Now, overall, how's training going and what are you working on regarding your game for this upcoming season?
Training has honestly been great. I have enjoyed being back in the gym, back to a somewhat normal lifestyle. Recently, which has been our biggest focus this summer, is power. A lot of explosive, lifting, everything's with tempos, a lot of quick feet. That's something I personally want to work on as I want to work on a faster, 3 quick steps to get ahead of your opponent. But that's been the main focus, has been power and speed.
Yeah, and that was my next question. What is one area of your game you're hoping to improve on the most heading into next season? Is just the quickness, or is it something else? Maybe trying to work on your puck battling skills and trying to be tougher on the corners.
I think my biggest thing for next season would probably be my conditioning, which is also another thing that I've worked on a lot, and agility, being able to, bounce in and out of corners, come in here, make tight turns, turn away from people, get the extra step on opponents. So that's been my biggest thing.
Now, that's good to hear that your off season is going well. Now, let's start off talking about the beginning of your hockey career and working all the way up to where you are now with Merrimack. So you're from Waterdown, Ontario. Just talk about growing up there and how did you start playing hockey?
So growing up, I have three older brothers, and they all grew up playing hockey. And I live out on a 10-acre property. So we actually have a big ice rink in the wintertime. So my dad had me in skates before I could walk, and I was out on the rink every day because I wanted to be just like my brothers. So I ended up getting into hockey when I was about 3 or 4 when I started like actually playing. I played boys hockey until I was 12. I played on the AA team in town here. And then I ended up switching over to girls when I was 12. I played in Brampton, and then I eventually switched over to Oakville, and that's that was the years that you start getting recruited. And then I ended up committing to Clarkson, and that's pretty much it. I just wanted to be like my brothers, and I ended up falling in love with it from them. So.
Do you have any funny stories of the backyard hockey games out on the ice outside? Because there's probably some good ones. I never really got to have that experience, to be honest with you. I never really had an outdoor rink, so I think it's cool to hear some of those stories because that's where I feel like players really fall in love with the game is just those fun games playing with your siblings outside in the outdoor ice.
Yeah, definitely. There's some good ones. What was it? So me and my brothers, we'd all go out there together. And I, being the youngest and the only girl, is I wanted to go out there and be like, I'm better than all you guys. But then, it starts getting really competitive. So then there'd be a lot of times that we would just start throwing each other in snowbanks, and you'd have to like run back through the snowbank in your skates and try to beat them again. But I think those are probably the best memories, is just messing around with my brothers out there and literally getting thrown.
Yeah.
So.
No fist fights because I know that happens sometimes with some siblings as well.
My brothers, yes, not so me. That's where
Mhm.
I would call it quits. I'd be like, you guys have fun. I'm gonna go now.
Now, who was your favorite player growing up? Was there someone you admired and tried to model your game after?
Yeah, I remember for years I would sit on YouTube and I would watch Patrick Kane just because of his hands. And I would sit there and I would practice trying to do the moves that he would do. I would try recreating his shootouts. But yeah, definitely Patrick Kane was someone that I watched a lot growing up.
Have you ever tried to do the shootout, one of those shootout moves in a game? I know the most famous one is probably the serpentine route where he just starts like going back and forth with the stick right in front of the goalie and then picks a corner.
Yeah, tried that in practice a couple times. It's worked a couple times,
Mhm.
but I didn't want to chance it in a game, so I just stuck to my classic head fake backhand. So, but
You got to try that in a shootout one time. And if it works, it can be on Sports Center and we can reference this podcast like Emily Oosterveld finally did the Patrick Kane move in a college hockey game. I think that would be pretty cool.
maybe this year in practice I'll work on it
All right.
after
All
hours.
right. You got to get back to me on that. And if it happens during a game, I better see that move happen.
I will send you the video.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, before college hockey, you played for the Oakville Hornets, like you said, in the PWHL. How'd you get the opportunity to play with that organization and develop as a hockey player?
So I was actually I'm part of Canada Inline Roller Hockey, and one of the girls that I played with, she played for Oakville, and it was my last year in Brampton because I knew I wanted to leave. And I remember like my parents were close with her parents, and they were talking like, well, why don't you come to Oakville? Like, Brampton's a 45-minute drive for me, and it was getting to be a lot to drive there 6 days a week. And they were like, well, so we'll put you in contact with the coach in Oakville. And I ended up talking to him on the phone, Jim Nyhouse, and we sat down at a Starbucks, and it was an instant like, this is where I want to be. This is the coach I want to play for. And I've spent the next 3 years there, and it was the best time of my minor hockey I think I ever had. So.
And how did you adjust to kind of being far away from home at such a young age, trying to develop your trying to develop as a hockey player, but also trying to develop as a person as well?
When I was at school?
Yeah, when you're in Oakville.
Oh, um, it was nice because we weren't super far away from home. Like it was only a 20-minute drive. Um, but yeah, no, it was just like it was a great place to be. They did a lot for me there. They were supportive. They had a really great coaching staff, a really great mentality, and they were just. I feel like they really built me into the person that I am today. Because they weren't only your coaches, they were also your friends when there was a time and a place for it. And if you were going through something school wise, hockey wise, family wise, they were always there, and they were always there to help. But I think that they definitely taught me how to be the best version of myself, which is something that I'll forever be grateful for from Oakville.
Now, just talk a little bit more about your experience in the PWHL and what's your favorite memory you've ever had with Oakville, whether it's on or off the ice?
Oh, there's so many memories. I don't even think I could pick one. I think all of the team get-togethers we would have, the team dinners, bus trips were always a big hit because we always had to play Ottawa and Nepean, so that was about 5.5, 6 hour bus ride, and we would just have a great time. I think my best memory, it's one of my most recent ones actually, is it was right before the pandemic happened, and we were going into first round of playoffs against Nepean. And the weekend before, we were actually in Ottawa, and we kind of messed up in those games and we lost both of them. So we ended up having to go back to play Nepean. And so we got smoked the weekend before, and we went in thinking like, shoot, like we just, got smoked last weekend. We went in and we ended up sweeping Nepean and outplayed them. And it was just like this huge confidence booster for us. We've never been so close as a group, I think, ever. Which is saying a lot because we were a very, very close group that last year in Oakville. But I think that's one of my best memories for sure.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's also fun to, go out on the road and get two big victories. And then that bus ride back is usually the best bus ride ever, just
Oh,
because
yeah.
if it's a 5 hour bus ride after a loss, it's usually the longest trip ever. But then, like, when it's the opposite, when it's a win, it's like the shortest bus ride ever, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, that's very true.
Any good bus stories at all? I feel like there's probably got to be a few. Any karaoke that happened? Because that's what I usually hear the most from those bus stories from players.
There's one karaoke story, Eva Warnell. She goes up there and she is an amazing singer. And we all had our phones out thinking that she's going to be so bad. And she was amazing. So that's the one karaoke story. But there's one, Christina Ball on the bus. All of a sudden, like everyone's just, doing homework, hanging out on the way to Ottawa. And I look, like everyone's like, what is that smell? And we look behind us and there's Christina Ball eating 2 hard-boiled eggs in between a piece of bread. And everyone's like, what are you doing? That's something I think I'll never forget. Like we still bring it up now and it's just so funny.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know. Hopefully, it didn't stink up the bus too bad because that would be tough after if 3 more hours left on the trip and you have to smell hard-boiled eggs. I don't know if I can handle that.
No, it was only about 2-3 minutes, which was good, thankfully, but it was just the
Yeah,
funniest thing.
yeah. And just talk about how your experience in the PWHL helped prepare you for college hockey with Clarkson and going on with Merrimack for this upcoming season.
I think just there's a lot of teams in the PWHL, which is good because I feel like you get exposed to a lot of different coaching styles and systems and how different teams play and their competitiveness. And, there's always a couple of players on each team that you have to look out for. So it was really great, like competition wise, because there's so many great female players in, the GTA. So I think that's something that definitely helped because, when I played in the ECAC, there was, well, I mean, typically there would be, but not my year because of COVID. But there's so many amazing players and there's so many teams. And I just feel like being in the PW and having all that competition, I think that definitely helped my transition to college hockey. And then just being in Oakville, we did a lot of development. We had some Olympic players come out and they would run a skill session for us once a week. We did a lot of seminars and we had sports psychs and everything. So I just felt like being in the PW, it definitely did prepare me for college hockey.
Yeah, and you're talking about that competition you face every night against other opponents, but you also have that competition in practice as well against your own teammates. One of those teammates was Sarah Boucher, who's obviously having a great career right now with Mercyhurst. What was it like being her teammate both on and off the ice? And just talk about how good of a goal scorer she was when she was with Oakville.
Yeah, Sarah Boucher, she's one of my best friends. We work out together every day. She's at my house pretty much every weekend. She was an amazing teammate, like an amazing teammate. I absolutely loved playing with her. One thing with Bouche, which is amazing, which I love so much about her, is you give her the puck, she's going to score. So when you're on the ice and you're in a tight game and you're on the ice with Sarah and you see her open, you give her the puck because she will score. Like she has such a hard shot that like I would be scared to block it. But no, she's a great person on and off the ice. She's a super, super hard worker. and just an overall amazing teammate.
Now you're mentioning me this to me. You were mentioning to me this earlier, but how you play roller hockey as well with Oakville, which I found interesting. Just talk about what it's like playing roller hockey in the summer and just how fun it is because I've never played it before, but it seems a little bit different than ice hockey, obviously, just because it seems like it'll be hard to stop your momentum.
Yeah, stopping, definitely the hardest thing to pick up in roller hockey. I started when I was younger, so I did have a lot of bruises on my tailbone the first couple weeks, that's for sure. Roller hockey is honestly, it's funny because it's like hockey, but also not like hockey at all. It's 4-on-4. Everything is about creating space, and it gives you so much time to work on your hands. Um, and it's like, it's so fun. I travel the world with it. Like, I've been to Italy, I've been to California, I've been to Barcelona, Spain, and we compete in world championships. Isabel Hardy at Providence, she actually plays with me, and we've been playing. We've gone to every worlds together. But yeah, it's honestly, it's almost refreshing to be playing in the summer to kind of get that little bit of a break from ice hockey, because it's just, as a college athlete and growing up playing hockey, that's all you do is you play hockey. So it's definitely, it's a great experience to get out, see the world while still playing, a type of hockey, but kind of getting away from what you've known your whole life.
Yeah, what's the coolest spot you've ever had the chance to visit playing roller hockey? That seems like it would be fun to go to Barcelona. I've seen some of the pictures of that city, and it just looks so incredible to just look at it through a screen. But I'm assuming going there in person is probably even more special.
Yeah, Barcelona was really, really cool. Um, when we first landed there, they were actually in the middle of a heat wave, which was not super fun the first couple of days, but it was great. The rink that we were playing at was on the beach, so we would just run and go swimming after. And beautiful city. That's probably one of my favorite places that I've been to. And then when I went to Italy, I was actually in Asiago, so I was up in the mountains pretty much, and it was this super small, tight knit community, but it was like you could walk everywhere. Um, yeah, it's definitely like I would never have those chances or experiences if I didn't play roller hockey.
Now, what's the food like in Italy? In Italy, because I've been to many great Italian restaurants before, but I'm assuming it's probably a little bit of a different experience actually having that type of food in the actual country where it's made in.
Yeah, my biggest thing was for breakfast, I would have a croissant every day.
Hmm.
They are like, you can't even compare croissants from here to there. Like, it is insane the difference. Pasta, pizza, literally everything. Like, I came home from Italy and I was like, this doesn't taste very good, because the food that we would eat at our hotel was literally made fresh every single day for us. So it was incredible, the food, that it kind of made me sad to come home. But
Is a croissant more of like an Italian thing? I thought it was more of like a French dish. I'm not the best culinary expert, so maybe I might be wrong on that.
honestly, I'm not either. I think it's more of a European thing. I just feel like
Hmm.
they do food a lot better over there than they do here.
I feel like we do some good food here, like the barbecue
Yeah.
in the States. I feel like
Oh,
is you can't compare that to anywhere else, but
no.
I think obviously each region of the world has its, I guess, like advantages food wise compared to other regions. So I don't know what it's like in Canada though. I've been to Toronto and there were some really good restaurants there, but it was pretty similar to America. But I don't know if there's
Yeah.
like anything unique about Canadian food versus maybe here in the States.
All I can think of is poutine and maple syrup.
I do like maple syrup. I've never had poutine before, so I gotta try that.
Oh, it's good.
All
It's
right,
very
I gotta try that. They don't really sell that here up here,
good.
so
No,
the biggest
no.
difference I noticed, like food wise, was so here in the States we have milk like in like bottles container, but in Canada it's like sold in a bag, which I thought was a little strange. That was like the only like culture shock I had when I was down there for a week.
Yeah, I get that. I hear that a lot, actually, that Americans think that it's just absolutely wild that we have bagged milk and not carton milk. But
Yeah, I just thought I think it's cool, but it was definitely a little bit odd to see that where it's like, where's all the cartons of milk? Like this is
yeah,
weird, but it's cool. I think it's awesome.
yeah, it's fun.
Now, obviously, playing with Isabel Hardy, we had her on the podcast before. One of the most underrated players, in my opinion, in hockey. Is how excited are you to play against her with Merrimack coming up in this upcoming season, and what's she like as a roller hockey player? Because I've never seen her play in person in that type of setting.
Well, I'm so excited to play against Izzy. Honestly, I'm just really looking forward to playing hockey East in general because I have so many friends that go to Providence, that go, to all the schools in hockey East, UNH and whatnot. But Izzy, yeah, we always, especially in roller hockey, like we'll go after each other here and there. So I think it'll be really fun just to see, a familiar face on the ice and someone that, I can get under her skin a little bit. She'll do the same to me. Um, Roller hockey wise, I love playing with her. We've been friends for a long time since I think she was in grade 9. I was in grade 8. We've been friends. She was actually our captain when we went to Barcelona, Spain. She's a great role model. She really gets the team going. She keeps everyone in line, keeps them focused. She's very smart. She's
Hmm.
very smart with the puck, and she knows exactly what she's doing at all times. So, yeah, I'm really, really excited to play against her. And yeah.
Now, in roller hockey, is it a ball you use as a puck, or is it like a street hockey puck?
It's kind of like a street hockey puck. I don't really know. Like the green biscuits?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
That's what I was
it's like
assuming.
yeah, it's like kind of like that, but not all at the same time. It's got like oh my goodness, these little like plastic ridges on it almost, so it glides.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's a lot lighter.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. I know what you're talking about. I just was curious if I feel like shooting a ball in a street puck, I look like Alex Ovechkin sometimes with these shots. I'll be making top shelf stuff, and then I get a puck on the ice, and it's the complete opposite. So that's the one thing I do like about street hockey. I look a lot better when I shoot the puck versus on the ice.
Yeah.
Now let's talk a little bit about your Oakville experience for a little bit. So in your final season with Oakville, you were named the assistant captain. What type of leadership did you want to bring to the team that season? And were you more of a vocal or lead by example type of player? Because that seems like a huge honor for yourself to have a letter on your jersey in your final year in juniors.
Yeah, I was thrilled honestly when my head coach Stacy told me I'd be wearing an A that year. I think I'd be a little bit of both, vocal and example, but I feel like definitely a little bit more vocal. Game days, I'm like the hype man. Like I love just getting everybody excited for the game. um, on the bench also as well, like someone comes off, they made a mistake or, they had a bad shift. Like my biggest thing was just making sure that they knew that, hey, that's your last shift. Like, don't worry about it. Go out there and do it again. Like you know, be better, fix it. And just don't worry about the past mistakes that you've made. But yeah, I would definitely say I'm the hype man. On the bench, I'm loud, energetic. I just love to hype up my teammates. But
Nice. What are some of your hype tactics, like in the locker room? Just like screaming, just being trying to bring that positive energy. Like I know it's a little bit different for different players. Like I was working with the baseball team this summer, and some of those guys are really good hype people when they're just like screaming when the pitcher's throwing the baseball for warm up. So and it's probably a little bit different in hockey. So I'm just curious to see how you did it.
yeah, our big thing was music was very loud, and we would always get like me and a couple of girls on my team, we'd always get in the middle of the room and we would just like, those last couple moments before coaches come in where you can still you're kind of like in your own element, like the room is yours. We would honestly like we wouldn't be too serious. It would be dance parties. We'd be goofing around. We'd be throwing around inside jokes, chirping people. Like I think that's just one of the biggest ways to hype people up is to just not let them know that there's like a ton of pressure on you in that given moment in time, just to kind of mellow out a bit and just get ready for the game, but also have fun at the same time because you always play better when you have a smile on your face. So,
Yeah, definitely. And that's important to have during the long season, which is a bit of a grind at times, especially when you're on a bit of a losing streak or your play might not be as good as you want it to be. You can be a bit down on yourself. To have someone in the locker room to kind of bring that positive energy and to hype people up is really
yeah,
important throughout, especially during points of the regular season.
exactly.
Now, take me back to your recruitment process when you were with Oakville. What was that like, and what made you want to go to Clarkson originally before your freshman year?
Yeah. So I believe, God, it feels like so long ago that I went through my recruiting process to Clarkson. I went to a showcase. I believe it was in Detroit. I believe. And I remember Clarkson was one of the schools that was scouting that weekend. And so they saw me there originally, and then I wasn't really expecting much. I was just kind of feeling it out. And then when I went to the U16 Team Ontario camp in the summer, I remember I was getting really frustrated with myself because our team kept losing and I felt like I could have been doing a lot better. And I called my mom after one of my games in my hotel room and I was like, Mom, like, I'm just getting so frustrated. Like, I'm not doing well. And she's like, well, Jim just called me and Clarkson wants to talk to you. And I was like, wait, what? Like, seriously? Yeah, then we just ended up having back and forth phone calls. I did a visit there when I was in grade 10. And at the time, I thought that I wanted a small town feel because that's kind of what I'm from right now is a small town. So that was a plus for me at the time. And then just their program. And, the girls, how many Olympians that have come out of their program, the national championships that they've won. They were doing a ton of renovations on the rink at the time, which was super exciting. And that's originally why I wanted to go there was just what they had to offer, the program, the location, the campus. And then I ended up committing, I believe, halfway through my grade 10 year. And yeah, that's how that happened.
Yeah, and before you went to Clarkson or playing your first couple of games with Clarkson, what was the biggest adjustment you had to make to college hockey? Was it just the speed of the game, or was it just the physicality since you're going against players that are 3 and 4 years older than you were?
I think for me, it was the speed personally. Like I said earlier, this summer has been my main focus is conditioning, power, and speed. And then also too, last summer was definitely a lot harder and more challenging training wise than this summer has been. Like last summer, I didn't get into a gym once at all before going to Clarkson. So I felt like I personally didn't prepare myself well enough, just given the circumstances. But yeah, I think that just the speed was the biggest adjustment for me.
Now,
Those
what
first couple.
was now what was the biggest improvement you've made to college hockey in your first year?
Um, Honestly, I would say my biggest improvement that I personally think has been off the ice. And it's been learning to deal with challenges on your own, how to persevere, how to balance school, how to handle hard conversations, difficult situations. I think that I've grown a ton as a person in my first year, and I've kind of figured out who I am. This past year, especially, when you're at home, I can just run and call, I can just go sit with my mom. My mom wasn't there, living on my own. So yeah, I think that was my biggest improvement this year was off the ice, and it was maturing and growing up and learning how to, handle things on your own.
Yeah, and how did you handle being away from home or living away from home for the very first time? And what was that adjustment like, especially towards the beginning, because of like we were talking about before with the border being closed with between the U.S. and Canada?
Yeah, it was funny actually because the beginning, actually at like the beginning, I was doing fine. I was like, this won't be that bad. Everything will be good. Uh, then what was I believe it was a month in, maybe a month and a half, because the borders were closed. I couldn't go home, and my brother, my oldest brother, he's the first brother to get married. I was a bridesmaid in his wedding, and I had to miss it because I couldn't go home. I couldn't get across the border and get back without doing a full 2-week quarantine and just all the complications with that. So that was definitely hard, and I think that's when I started struggling the most with missing home. Um, it sucked. It was really hard. I think especially it was hard playing your first college game and your parents not being able to, come and watch and be in the stands and see you. Um, I think the biggest thing that helped me through that was FaceTime. FaceTime was my best friend last year, talking to my mom at least, I'd say 3 or 4 times a week. But yeah, that's pretty much how I dealt with it was FaceTime my parents, my brothers, sisters-in-laws, and all that. So
Yeah, no, being away from home is something that I feel like everyone has to face at some point in their lives. But I think with the circumstances that were with yourself, not being able to have the chance to go back home because of the border and also trying to play a college hockey season as well, I just think that made it a little more difficult for this year's freshmen trying to adapt, be living away from home for the first time.
yeah, it was definitely a struggle. It definitely wasn't the year that I
Hmm.
think anyone was ever expecting or, expecting it to be that challenging. You kind of had it in your head beforehand that it's going to be hard and you're going to have to deal with some stuff. But once you're there and you're living in it and it's it kind of catches you by surprise how hard it can hit you sometimes. But
Yeah, and obviously, how is it balancing both academics and hockey at such a high level, especially this year with mostly all the classes being online?
yeah, it was definitely a weird year for school. At the beginning, I was on top of things, and it was like it wasn't bad. But then you start getting mentally and physically tired, and with majority of stuff online, I feel like me personally, I can get lost in my computer and not know where to find things, or don't know where an email is or where an assignment is. So there were definitely times that I struggled. I struggled pretty bad, and it was hard to keep up with everything. But I had really great advisors at school that they ended up meeting with me once a week just to try to get me back on track. Super, super supportive, amazing people that I honestly probably wouldn't have made it through without them and their support. So it's definitely challenging, but every school has their resources to help you and they just want you to succeed. So
Yeah, no, I was a freshman last year in college, and that's something I feel the same way as you did. Is just the motivation aspect of online school was a little more difficult than being in person. I think the thing I noticed was whenever you're in like a library or school setting, it's easier to get work done, and you get work done more quickly than being in your like room with all the distractions that your room has. I feel like it was tougher to get work done, and for me, it was taking longer to get assignments done online versus at school, which is, I think, the thing I prefer more about in-person learning than online learning.
yeah, I felt the exact same way because I associated my dorm room with sleeping and eating, to be totally honest. Like that's where I would eat my dinners. That's where I would, go to bed at night. And so I actually did start getting to the point where I had to force myself to go across to the campus resource center and just sit and do my homework because I'd be way more productive. But it was that mental barrier of being like, okay, you need to actually get up and walk across campus to do this, or else it's not going to get done.
Yeah.
But I definitely prefer in-person learning over online because I feel like I'm actually retaining the information and not just going through the emotions, on a Zoom call. So
Yeah, I prefer the asynchronous classes that I had. I took one. I really liked it because I felt like I had more of I could structure my schedule better to get my work done that way. I feel like when you're just in the Zoom meetings, you're just sitting there. You're not really learning as much. I feel like you're learning more with the asynchronous because you have to like motivate yourself to like do the work and learn it on your own.
yeah, exactly.
But the one thing I will say about online learning that I did like more was like I mentioned the schedule aspect. Like I could basically once I got all my classes done, I felt like I had more free time to do whatever. Obviously, you have to learn how to manage your time to get your stuff done, but I just preferred, you know, doing the online school. Is just I feel like I had more time, which I don't think I'm going to have as much time as before with
No,
classes being back in person. Hopefully next year.
I hope so. Which I mean, word is right now, Merrimack is, Boston. We don't have any restrictions right now, and it's going to go back to normal life.
Yeah.
Excuse me for 1 second. Dog wants to go out, so I'm going to
Yeah,
just
that's
open
not a
the door.
problem. But so yeah, no, that's something I definitely. That's just my personal opinion on online school. And I live in the Boston area as well. I go to a school right near Merrimack, so
Nice.
that's I think we'll be dealing with the same type of problem, whether it's in person or whether it's online. I think it's going to be in person, just with like some social distancing stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to say anything's better than last year at this point. So
I totally agree with you on that. Now, and you also had to face some challenges on the ice as well. And one of those challenges was schedule changes, especially in the ECAC, because you only played only three opponents, and your schedule was kind of like, is this game going to happen or is this game not going to happen? So how'd you like kind of maintain that flexibility for this season, and how'd you like deal with all those schedule changes that happened to your season with it being pushed back as well?
yeah, it was definitely frustrating. I also think it was extra frustrating too, just because in the ECAC, all the Ivy Leagues dropped, and then Union dropped, and RPI dropped, and then it was just us, QPAC, SLU, and Colgate. Um, so I think that made it even more frustrating because if a team did end up having to go into quarantine because of contact tracing or one person tested positive, then like your game would get canceled and it would kind of mess up everybody's schedule because there's only four of us. Like it was a bit of a pain in the butt that way. um and it was definitely frustrating and mentally challenging when you're putting all your time in all week long. You're in the rink, you're in the gym, you're putting in all your effort, and then you get a call or an email or a Zoom call, like Thursday night, Friday morning, it's like, hey, listen, somebody got contact traced, or the team has to go into quarantine. Like, we're not playing this weekend. I think that's definitely like very, very challenging. Um, but one way I thought like that I personally dealt with it is like you just keep going. It sucks. It's not a normal year. I think that was like my motto last year. Is something would go wrong schedule wise or whatnot, and it would just be like, it's not a normal year. You just kind of everyone's dealing with the same issues right now, regardless of what conference you're in or where you're playing, and you just got to keep pushing through it. And it sucks, but it's just the way it was last year. So
Yeah, that must be the worst feeling when it's like a false positive test and you could have played that game that weekend, but because of the whole contract tracing, you couldn't. That as I feel like as a player that must suck just because like man, we could have gotten 2 more games in to help our tournament standpoint, and then now we couldn't even play those 2 games.
yeah, it was definitely frustrating. That was another adjustment, is learning to accept the fact that you need to get COVID tested at least 3 times a week. It was a little uncomfortable at first. You always have to get the swab, but yeah, that was definitely an adjustment for me too. Because before I had I think 2 COVID tests in my life, and it was literally just to go to the States
Hmm.
in the first place. But then learning, to like adapting to being there at the rink, getting tested 3 days a week was a little weird at first, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And how did you deal with not playing in front of any fans as well? I think the more tough part was it that your family couldn't come see you play in person, but obviously it must be a little bit weird just not having any crowd in the stadium at all.
Yeah, it was definitely strange for me, especially going in as a freshman, and I visited Clarkson, before the pandemic, and I see the amount of fans that come and show up and support the women's and men's program, and you feel the energy because Potsdam is a very small community, and everyone shows up to the rinks all the time, especially if we play against St. Lawrence, which we played a bunch this year. You always fill the barn, like it's always packed. It was definitely hard going out and looking up at some cardboard cutouts of your family members and community members and whatnot. I feel like the biggest challenge was trying to bring the energy every single day, on the bench during those games, because normally, you score a goal and the whole rink goes crazy, but we didn't have that. So I feel like that was a big struggle, I think, with our team and with, me and everyone, that you couldn't, like, you had to bring that energy and you had to do it yourself. You couldn't, rely on your fans, or you couldn't bring the energy from your fans and bring that into your game. You had to create it yourself, which at times, you get tired during the season, you can get frustrated and on the bench and everything. So I feel like that was weird and hard, trying to play those games without any fans. So
And how did you try to bring that energy on the ice? Because watching some college hockey games just through the streaming services, like whenever there was a goal, big check, or like a block shot, the benches would go crazy. Is that something your team tried to do?
yeah, that's definitely something that we implemented into our game. That was honestly, we had a lot of conversations about that in the room with coaches, with captains, with just players all around, even our training staff. Like, I remember it was just, that was a huge part of our team and our culture, was to bring that energy on the bench, because we didn't have the fans, and it was kind of like having a support system on the bench within your team. You would block a shot and our team would just go nuts, or we'd score a goal and we would go nuts, just so that we could maintain that energy level. But yeah.
Now, something that was introduced to college hockey this year was 3-on-3 overtime. What was that like for yourself, being kind of like an offensive player and having that space on the ice and having more offensive opportunities than you normally would have in a normal 4-on-4 overtime situation?
Honestly, I love 3-on-3 personally, especially like I said previously, coming in with a roller hockey background, I love creating space. I love having that extra time to make the right play. Honestly, I think it's great that they implemented that into college hockey, just because I feel like it's a little more interesting to watch at times. It's a big game and you have so much space, and as soon as the puck goes, from your team to the other team, and you're sitting there, and then all of a sudden, like, they have full control and everyone's on their toes, like, oh my goodness, like, what's going to happen? Like, I think it's great that they implemented it, and I personally love 3-on-3 hockey. So
Yeah, it was fun watching your team do the 3-on-3, especially with Nicole Gosling, who was one of the best defensemen in college hockey last year. Just seeing her have all that time and space was just fun to watch. And it was cool how many great plays she created in those overtime situations.
Oh yes, Gosling is so smart with the puck. Like I love watching her. Like in those 3-on-3s, and I see her get the puck. Like that puck's gonna be in their end and it's gonna stay there, because she's so smart. She's fast. She's strong. Um, yeah, no, she's a great player to watch. Phenomenal hockey player.
What was it like being her teammate this past year? Because I know she played for London in the PWHL. And I don't know if that's like a big rivalry between Oakville and London in the PWHL, but what was it like finally being her teammate and not going against her in juniors?
Honestly, it was great being her teammate because I didn't have to deal trying to get past her at the point. That was something that we always joked about when we were in the PW, is we would always just kind of mess with each other on the ice. It was great being on her team. She was a great person, a great player. It was hard trying to, build like a very personal relationship with her just because of COVID and protocols and stuff. There were a lot of times that I actually wasn't allowed, like we weren't allowed to be in each other's houses. The only time we could see each other was at the rink. But yeah, I've known her a couple of years now, and playing against her in London, we'd always talk before and after games, and then being on her team, yeah, she's just a great person overall.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about that ECAC playoff game you played against St. Lawrence a couple of months ago. You unfortunately lost that game, but what did you overall take away from that game, especially the overtime goal that was scored by St. Lawrence, because it was somewhat controversial?
Yeah, something I took away from that game is that it really doesn't matter how the rest of the game has gone. It just watching our team come together in those, that last little bit of that game, and when we made the comeback, and just watching us support each other, because like the previous games before that, we struggled a bit. We struggled sometimes with bringing energy, or we just purely got outworked by St. Lawrence, and it was frustrating. But seeing us, be down again in that final game, but then, we had a lot of really good conversations in the locker room between periods, and I think, our captains did a great job talking to us. Not only our captains, there was a lot of people in that room that spoke, and I think it really, really hyped our team up, and that's just something that I don't think I'll ever forget, is those conversations that we had, and just how hard we worked that game. We worked so hard to try and win that game. It doesn't always go your way, especially with that goal at the end. Oh my goodness, it was really frustrating, because after that game, I remember calling my mom, and she was watching that game, and she was saying that, the commentators were like, "There's no way that that's going to be a goal. Like it clearly,
Yeah,
clearly
and
went out."
St. Lawrence broadcasters too, so you would think there would be a little
Exactly.
bias towards St. Lawrence, and even they were. That's why I was surprised it was called a goal too.
Yeah, it was. And sitting on the bench waiting was just, it was horrible, because it was so long. And then normally, if they're sitting there and they're reviewing if it's going to be a goal or not, like they're reviewing it going over, and it takes that long. Normally you're like, okay, I think this is going to go in our favor, if they have to look at it that long. Yeah, and I just remember at the beginning of it, we were all so nervous, just sitting there, like instantly upset, right? Because like our Matt DeRoches didn't call the refs over until after St. Lawrence had already celebrated, and we're done, that's it. Like we were all crying on the bench, upset. Um, yeah, that was a brutal call.
Yeah, and what was it like waiting for the officials to decide that call? I know you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but it felt, for me watching that game, it felt like it took 20 minutes for them to make that decision. I'm assuming on the bench, it probably felt a little bit longer than that.
Yeah, it was stressful. And I remember Michelle Pasechnik was in net, and she's like the freshman goalie. She was my roommate. That kid doesn't cry. She doesn't really show much emotion. She's kind of just a go with the flow type of person. I remember, I went out on the ice after, because, you know, they stupid call. But she was crying, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is brutal. And it was so stressful. But I remember after Matt had called the refs over me, like, we want to review that, he was kind of like, guys, it'll be fine. Like, it was clearly out, we're talking to the refs, they're going to go review it. So it kind of calmed us down for a bit, but everyone started getting really impatient and anxious. We were all like, we couldn't stand still on the bench. We were all sitting down, standing up, we were sitting on the boards, and we would hop on the ice for a minute. It was a very stressful, like, you could almost feel the stress and tension coming out of people on the bench. It was it was a very long wait for a very
Yeah,
unfortunate outcome.
yeah, because you guys, I felt like in my perspective, you outplayed St. Lawrence in that overtime. Like you had so much zone time in St. Lawrence's zone. You were creating a lot of offensive chances. Like we were talking about, Nicole Gosling was just playing outstanding in that overtime, creating chances for a lot of your top scorers on that team. And just, for one freaky play to happen and to end the season, I think it makes it even worse than if it was just kind of like a normal goal. And maybe that's just from my perspective from playing. I feel like
Yeah,
I would feel worse about it because of the way it happened as well, just from the whole overtime perspective.
yeah, it's heartbreaking when you work that hard and like you said in that overtime we outplayed them and we were all over them and it was like chance after chance and the momentum that we were building off of, each previous shift. And I remember I was sitting on the bench with my teammates and I was like, this is like we're doing great. Like I think this is gonna there's no way this isn't gonna go our way. Like look at us go right now. And then one fluke goal and that was it. But
And how was playoff hockey different from regular season hockey from your perspective, even though it was only like a 15-game regular season?
yeah, I honestly think it was faster. It was faster. There was more energy, a lot more physical. Even not even just in the games and practices. Like our team didn't matter that we were on the same team. We would go just as hard against each other as we would, against St. Lawrence or Quinnipiac or Colgate or whoever it was that we'd be playing. And I just think again, yeah, just the energy and the speed was the biggest thing. Everyone just we didn't want to lose. So
Now let's transition a little bit and talk about you going to Merrimack for next season. So what made you want to go there versus other schools? And just talk about the transferring process and what that was like, because from talking to other players just off the record, it seemed like the transfer portal for this offseason was a lot more crowded and a little more intense than it normally is.
yeah, that's for sure. Honestly, I was really, really worried going into the transfer portal just because after the year that we had and the extra year of eligibility that NCAA had given out, yeah, it was crazy the amount of people that you would hear were in the portal. And I honestly thought like maybe I thought I was done hockey for a brief minute there. I was like, there's no way that I'm gonna find a spot. Like it was a weird year last year. I wasn't a starter at Clarkson or anything. I wasn't anything special. So I was really, really worried that I wasn't going to find anything, but I ended up, a girl actually that I played hockey with, Aries Musto. She goes to Merrimack. She's a goalie. I played with her in Oakville, but she actually reached out to me and she was like, hey, I'm uh, my assistant coach just saw you in the portal and he's like, can I contact her? So this is me calling to be like, hey, can I give you his number? I was like, yeah, of course. Honestly, I ended up hitting it off right away with the coaches. It was exactly the environment that I wanted to be in. And like I said previously about going to Clarkson, like I thought that I wanted that small town feel, but then soon realized that it was a little too small for me in Potsdam. So the location of Merrimack is exactly what I'm looking for. It's in a big city. I'm 30 minutes from downtown Boston, which I think will be great. I'm close to a lot of my friends because they all go to Boston schools. Um, but yeah, and the biggest thing was culture for me is their team and all the things that I've heard from previous players, from players on the team right now, from the Zoom calls, from talking to the coaches. It just seemed like the perfect fit. And I couldn't see myself going to another school.
And what do you know as of right now about the Hockey's conference, and which team or player are you excited to play against the most for this upcoming season? I know we talked about playing against Isabel Hardy, but is there another team or player that you might not know that you're excited to play against for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I'm really there's a lot of girls actually that I've played with in the past or I'm good friends with that play in Hockey East. I think UNH is a big one. I have a lot of friends on that team. There's a couple of them that Siobhan Truder, actually, I played with her in summer hockey for, years and years. I think we were 10 when we first started, maybe a little bit younger. We were way younger than that. Anyways, I've known her for a long time. Jada Christian, I played with her in Oakville. There's a couple girls at Boston University, not Harvard, but that's different conference. Yeah, there's just a lot of girls in Hockey East that I'm really looking forward to playing against. So.
Now, is the style of playing Hockey East a little different than the ECAC from just watching it through a TV screen, or do you not really know? You're kind of just going in fresh, I guess.
I think I'm more so just going in fresh. I honestly didn't really have a lot of time to really pay attention to other conferences. I was more so focusing on myself and my current situation. But yeah, I'm really excited to find out.
Now, what are your goals and expectations for yourself and for your team for this upcoming season with Merrimack? It feels like they kind of have some unfinished business because they weren't able to participate in the Hockey's playoffs last year because of some COVID reasons. So I feel like the team will
Yeah.
probably be a little bit motivated to try to win a playoff game this year.
Yeah, I'm honestly really looking forward to it. I'm hoping to be an impact player, bring my physicality to the game. Um, I'm hoping to be, a top six forward and make a big impact. I think that our team this year, I think that we're going to do really well. I think that we've acquired some really good players from all sorts of different conferences and all sorts of, talent levels. Each one brings a different factor to the table, which I think is really great. And I just think, I think our team's going to be really, really close this year. I've been on a couple Zoom calls with them, and the culture seems great. I think everyone's going to get along, and that goes a really, really long way with the team. Doesn't matter if you have the best players. If you guys don't get along, it will never really work out. So I think that we'll do a lot better this year than they did last year, especially COVID's not as big of a factor this year as it was last year. So hopefully, it'll keep everybody healthy and not in quarantine.
So we're now in a segment I like to call the non-hockey segment, where I ask you some non-hockey questions just to get to know you a little bit off the ice. My first question to you is, what music do you like to listen to, whether it's before a game or just on a general basis?
I'm from the country, so I do love my country music.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like my all-around stuff. But before games is definitely some like EDM or some rap. Like gets me going.
Yeah, I'm definitely an EDM, hip hop, pop music type of guy. However, I was working with the baseball team, like I kind of mentioned during the interview this past summer, and a lot of the guys on the team were from like Texas and Florida, so there was a lot of country music playing in the stadium. So there were some really good songs, and I feel like it has a good summer vibe to it. So I definitely am starting to get into country a little bit more than I was in the past.
Yeah.
Who's your go-to artist? Like Luke Bryan, someone like that, Thomas Rhett. Those were the two
Uh,
guys that I heard the most.
yeah, my biggest one is Morgan Wallen.
Mm-hmm.
Love Morgan Wallen. Luke Combs is a big one. Honestly, the list could go on. There's so many country artists out there that I have all on my playlist right now.
Do you like the song More Than My Hometown? Because that was played a lot, and I thought it was a good song.
Yeah, love that song. I could sing every word to that song.
Well, I'm not asking you to do that here, but, it's still a good song.
Yeah, no.
If there was a movie made about your life, who would you want to play yourself and why?
Goodness, I thought about this question and I genuinely couldn't think of anyone. That's a tough question to answer. Like I couldn't even like ballpark it. Like
Mm.
I don't know.
I don't know. I can't think of any, like, actresses, but for myself, it would probably be, like, Pete Davidson, just because we have the same sense of humor. Even though we look nothing
Yeah,
like, I think it would just be funny just to have him play myself in a movie.
yeah. Pete Davidson's a funny guy.
So, but yeah, no, I don't know about yourself if you couldn't think of
Oh.
anyone. Yeah. All right. All right. What is your biggest pet peeve? It seems like not a lot of things bother you on the ice, but is there something that might bother you off the ice?
Yeah, I thought about this one. My biggest pet peeve, I think, is when you make a set plan with people and then last minute they're all like, oh wait, never mind, I can't go.
Hmm.
Or like plans falling through, I think that's my biggest pet peeve.
I can totally see that, when you're in this podcast industry, sometimes that happens, but, it's something I've had to learn to deal with. But I can definitely see your point where it can be a bit frustrating.
Yeah, exactly.
I think for myself, and I say this every episode, is bad driving. I absolutely hate when no one knows how to drive, especially when you need to get somewhere. And in Massachusetts, sometimes people drive here a little bit different than other places in the U.S. And I'm assuming you're going to get to learn that a little bit when you're down here for college. But yeah, no, it's a bit frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, you can add that to my list. I don't like bad drivers either.
Yeah, no, it just, slow, bad, whatever it is, it just bothers me a lot. But it
Yeah.
is what it is. It's something you have to deal with as well. It's never going to go away, even though I rant about it all the time.
Oh, I know. Another one too is when you're driving and you're going straight and there's nowhere to turn and they didn't turn off their signal to change lanes and you
Oh,
just
I know. It's in the highway. Yeah, and
yes,
when's this
just
person
sitting
gonna turn
there.
off their signal? Yeah, and that's happened before. I agree with you on that. I
Or
didn't.
even like when you're driving beside them and like you're trying to let them in and they're not moving and I'm like, okay, you just turn it off, like you're driving me nuts.
Yeah, no, the merging is that's like that was probably the hardest thing I had to learn when I was learning how to drive was how to merge on the highway. Because some people just don't let you go through. They're just gonna like
No,
speed by, and you have to like learn how to slow down and like kind of zing into the lane as best you can.
yeah,
So that's something that I think that's probably like the hardest thing to learn how when you're learning how to drive. Either that or like parallel parking, one of those two.
yeah, yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Now, what is your favorite outdoor activity? You said you go to a cottage every summer, so I'm assuming you have some fun things you like to do.
Yeah, I think my favorite outdoor activity is I love wakeboarding. Wakeboarding is a big one on my list. And then honestly, because I get so busy, even though like summer, it's your off season, it's like your downtime. It's never downtime. So my weekends when I do go to the cottage, I honestly love to just sit on the dock,
That's
just lay there.
awesome. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good one. Yeah, sometimes it's good just to relax, especially after a long hockey season.
yeah.
Now, final non-hockey question is: if there's any meal you could have for the rest of your life, what would that meal be and why?
That's a good question. Mm,
I have a lot of things. I couldn't pick this one. This one was a tough one for me.
right? Oh my goodness.
Probably like
Like I
chicken
am.
nuggets or like chicken parm or
Yeah.
like pasta. Like one of the three. I can eat that every day.
See, I love pasta. I'm a big sucker for fries. Like I love fries.
Yeah, I agree. That's good too.
Honestly, I think I'd go with like maybe pizza. Like pizza's just my go-to. You
Hmm.
know, pizza's just a good comfort food.
Yeah.
I'd
What's
say
the
pizza.
best pizza place in Canada?
Honestly, I don't know because I'm from a small town, so all we really have is like the chain pizzas. But my favorite pizza is my own pizza. My dad built my mom a pizza oven outside in the kitchen. Um, and so my mom she's like like an amazing cook. And so she makes her own dough and her own sauces and everything. And so I think her pizza's the best. And I bet Sarah Boucher can agree on that one. She's had it. She's
Mhm.
had it a bunch of times. So
I don't know how the mailing situation works, but you should try to get that mailed to your dorm room at Merrimack and like give it to some of your teammates. I think that'll be cool.
oh yeah, I'll get a rush. I'll pay extra for express shipping.
Yeah, that'll be awesome just to hear about. Now back to some hockey questions. Now, my first one to you is, what do you think should be done to help grow women's hockey?
I think we just need more media coverage. We need more exposure. I remember when it was my year, my age group for U18 Worlds, I remember I was just trying to watch some of their games, and even just trying to find the link was hard. And then, you see any men's Canada team and you can find them on the TV, no problem. And I
Yeah.
think that's like the biggest thing right now is honestly just exposure. And I don't think that we do it enough by a long shot, to be totally honest.
Yeah, no, and I hope this podcast helps a little bit with that, trying to promote you guys. Even though I'm not the most like big hockey name in the media, I hope that I can use this platform to help promote you guys as best I can. So that's what my goal is, and I totally agree with you on more media coverage because that's how I discovered women's hockey was just by the Olympics being on TV. I'm assuming that's how most people found out about it. So if it's just being shown on TV more people will find it and start to watch it because I was reading somewhere where the college softball World Series had more viewers than the college baseball World Series. That's just because it was on TV. So I think more
Exactly.
coverage like that, I think that would help grow the sport.
Yeah, well, I love the podcast and I love what you're doing with it to bring more exposure to our sport.
Yeah, and especially with like the under 18 World Championships, someone was telling me that like the footage was just like a security camera, like up on the ceiling, like you couldn't really see like the game being played. Is that
It was
like a
like
true?
yeah, I remember it was like they couldn't even bother to bring someone in to actually work the camera. Like they literally just set it up in like a bird's eye view up in the back corner of the rink and it was essentially like a bubble
Mhm.
almost. was what you were looking at. It was brutal.
Yeah, no, so that's something that they should fix as well. And with the youth with the junior hockey, and then obviously I think college hockey is starting to get a little bit better with the streaming services being shown for
Yeah.
both men's and women's college hockey. So just trying to bring more of that exposure.
Mhm.
So I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Now, what
Definitely.
advice would you give a younger player who's trying to pursue a Division I college hockey scholarship?
Honestly, never give up. You're going to go through so many hard times. You're going to have to deal with a lot of difficult situations, difficult coaches your whole life. And it's never going to go your way. It's never going to be perfect. And I think the biggest thing is to just be strong. Keep working hard, keep doing what you can do, to better yourself, get in the gym, go shoot pucks in your driveway. But I think my biggest thing is to never give up, because there have been times that I almost have. And if I did, I would never be where I am today. And I am forever grateful to myself that I never gave up and I kept working hard. So I think that's my biggest piece of advice that I could give to someone.
Now, is there any shout outs you'd like to give to any of your family members, teammates, friends, anyone that I might have not mentioned? Feel free to shout them out now.
I'm trying to think. I mentioned a lot of people on this podcast. I think I'm good for shout-outs.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. Well, thank you so much, Emily, for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Take care, stay safe, and I just want to let you know that you're one of my favorite players to watch in college hockey, and I'm excited to see you play for Merrimack next season.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me on the podcast, and I look forward to hearing to your future podcasts.
Awesome.